الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء وخاتم المرسلين وأما بعد. Alhamdulillah, by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we wanted to discuss today a little bit about the coronavirus. Not just what you've been hyped up in hearing, but also, more importantly, the facts versus the fear. And more important than that is the how and why of the coronavirus. What is the coronavirus? The coronavirus is a virus from the family of viruses called the novel coronaviruses. This is not something new. These viruses have been around for a long time, but we have a new strand, a new form of it that's evolved, and this is called the CoV-2. The coronavirus is not the same as COVID-19. Coronaviruses are a family that have been called the coronaviruses because of the protein spikes around that make it look like a crown, and Latin word for a crown being corona. But each evolved strain has its own unique characteristics and needs a vaccine for it. This is a new strand, and it's been called CoV-2. It causes a condition that's called SARS, Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome, and that attacks your respiratory system. That can cause problems in the human body, from very mild issues to very severe issues to death. Having said that, COVID-19, the disease that's caused by the coronavirus that's out there today, COVID-2, is not always fatal. In fact, the mortality rate, the people who die from it, is less than 2% right now. Less than 2%. That means more than 98% of the people that get this virus, this disease, this condition, will get better from it. So we don't want to cause panic. I'm an imam in a masjid. I have a master's in hadith, but at the same time, I work in the med device industry. I work with infectious diseases. I work with companies like Roche, like Inovio, and other companies who work on these kind of vaccines. I've worked with Abbott. I worked on the Ebola virus and on the Ribat system. So I also have a background understanding the science of it. I want to explain a few things just to put things in context. Right now, this is Monday, March the 16th, 2020. As of today, CDC has told us that there are 62 confirmed deaths in the United States. And the population that's been known to be infected right now, even presumptive, is 3,200 people in the entire country of the United States of America. Tayyib, what does that mean? That means out of the 320 million people, 320 plus million that live in the United States, 0.001%, not even 1%, not even 0.1%, 0.001% have been affected by this. That's a very small number, understand? And 62 deaths in the United States, the whole country, that means you couldn't even put a fraction on this. This is how insignificant that number is to the country. Worldwide, we've had 6,000 confirmed deaths in the whole world. That's out of 8 billion people. Understand that this is not something to freak out about, because panic causes worse reactions than some of these diseases themselves. And that's why I want to make this clear. To give some perspective, the swine flu, or which is known as H1N1, it affected almost 600,000 people around the world in effect of dying from it. 600,000 people in the world. 61 million Americans were infected with this. Just in America, 61 million. More than 12,000 Americans died from it between 2009 and 2010. So, from a global perspective, that was much worse. Now, we're not at the end of this coronavirus that we're dealing with right now, so we don't really know how far it will go. But just to see that people shouldn't really be freaking out. I'll give you some more statistics just to give you perspective. If we look at the United States annually, just in America, we're not talking about the whole world, just in America, 40,000 people are killed due to drunk driving. Not the other aspects of alcohol with liver failure and heart failure, just drunk driving. So you are much more likely to get hit by a drunk driver and be killed because of alcohol or an alcohol-related death than you are with coronavirus. It's not even close. We're talking about 62 deaths right now in comparison to 40,000 annually from drunk driving. If we look at other types of infectious diseases like hepatitis C, in 2014, more than 20,000 Americans died because of hepatitis C. 20,000. So again, even from an infectious disease perspective, hepatitis C is much more likely right now to kill you than coronavirus is. All of these things aside, I mean, if you look at worldwide, 75 million people get affected worldwide, and there's 400,000 deaths because of hepatitis C every year. So all these statistics tell us that, look, we need not to freak out. We need not to panic. Rather, what do we need to do? We need to use our intelligence. What is the issue? Why is there such a concern around the coronavirus? Is because the unique characteristic here is that it is infectious at a stage with no symptoms for, depending on I mean, some of these different studies have shown between 5 to 10 days. So that means you could have it and show no symptoms and be passing it on. So that is the danger. That's the danger we're dealing with. Let me explain something. For example, every disease that we deal with, we have what's called the curve. You have the number of cases talking about, and then the period of time. So this curve usually goes like this. You see, it starts to ramp up, and then the immune systems develop, vaccines develop, and the curve goes down. And then you see a trend that continues. You know, most of these viruses don't go away, but the pandemic or epidemic there then kind of dies out. We don't really know where we are on this right now. The good news is there are countries like Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore, and to some effect China that is already seeing a flattening of this curve. So we're not looking at something that, okay, it's just going to keep going on and on. But in the United States and other countries like this, it's probably going to get worse before it gets better. What we're trying to do is to flatten the curve, is to not have this spike. And why is that? Because if we look at the mortality rate, it's not that bad. I mean, less than 2%. So we're not worried about that it's going to wipe out large amounts of the population. But because you don't know that you are infectious for many days, you could spread it to many people. And if it gets widespread, then about 80% of the population will be fine. They don't even need to go to a hospital. But the 20% that does go to the hospital that will need medical care might overwhelm the American hospital systems. So this is why the attempt is there to keep the disease in control. So what should you do? First thing, don't panic. Don't start hoarding things like we're seeing with toilet paper and things like that. That's going to cause more problems. And if we don't keep this panic under control, we're going to see riots, we're going to see burglaries and things like this. And that's going to probably be a much more harmful effect to the country and to the population than the disease itself. You should use the sunnah method, which is that you should live by the sunnah, meaning making wudu. It is mustahab to make wudu for every salah, even if you already have wudu. When you make wudu and you wash your hands properly, thoroughly, in the sunnah way of doing it 3 times, then you see that this will be one of the methods of controlling it and putting it aside. Other things like following the sunnah, which is from the hadith in Abu Dawood, regarding washing the hands. Even though the hadith has some kalam, but it's a thabitun amrun about washing your hands before eating. Because this disease is not airborne. It's not just like sitting in the same place as somebody who has it will get it to you, like TB and others. It's infectious through droplets. So it has to get on you or has to get into you in some way. So if you get it on your hands, you touch a surface that has it, and then you touch your mouth, and you touch your nose, it could get into your body. But if you touch a surface and then you wash your hands, as it is from the sunnah, for example, for wudu, or before eating, or things like this, or when you wake up in the morning, as from the sunnah, when a wajib, a hukam, to wash your hands 3 times before you put your hand in a bowl. And if you follow those methods, this is one method. One way that it helps control, and you should do that regularly because that is the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When you do wash, as the medical professionals have mentioned, you should wash at least for 20 seconds. It shouldn't be a quick rinse. And if you can use soap or if you can use antibacterial substances, this is better and this is good to use. Not to touch the face and nose too much. If you have symptoms, if you have fever, cough and shortness of breath, you should definitely contact your medical personnel. That doesn't mean everybody who's coughing or everybody with a fever has coronavirus. I mean, there are many other diseases and infections and bacteria that could cause such symptoms. So again, even if you do have a cough, don't freak out, but contact the authorities early, because you don't want to be infectious out there. So these things regarding Salah in Jama'ah and giving up the Jum'ah, we will leave this decision to the people of each area. Because in a way, we always have viruses and flus and SARS, I mean different types of conditions that cause the SARS going on in the world. So if you're just going to say, oh, it's preemptive, then nowhere will ever have Salah. And we don't want people to freak out in that way. But in certain communities, in certain countries, in certain locations, it may be necessary for a period of time to stop the Jum'ah and stop the Salah in Jama'ah. So we will leave that to your community leaders. Contact your regular masjid, your community leader, your shuyukh, let them make that decision. And then follow that decision. Having said that, it's something interesting that we see a lot of countries where they had no cases of the coronavirus that shut down the masajid but kept theaters and bars and other places like that open. So it's kind of interesting why that was the first thing to be sacrificed for Salah and Jama'ah, when really that's something essential in the life of a Muslim. But as I said, if need be, this is a decision that the scholars and the medical personnel can make. And if they make that decision, then you should follow that decision. Having said that, this has been a discussion a little bit about the how it spreads, how are the statistics about it. But we also as Muslims need to think about the why. Why are we being tested with this right now? For the Prophet ﷺ has told us, لم يظهر فحشة, there never will be a widespread of lewd actions في قوم قط, in a nation ever, إلا except فشا فيهم, and it will be spread amongst them ta'un, these types of plagues will spread amongst them. And this hadith Ibn Majah has reported, and it's a sahih hadith. So what does that tell us? The sabab, what is the reason why these types of ta'un, these types of plague, these types of viruses spread, is because of lewd and immoral actions becoming widespread. And we know from the hadith of Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu that Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawziyah has mentioned in Da'wa al-Dawa. He said, فَمَا نَزَّلَ بَلَا إِلَّا بِذَنْبٍ. He says that al-bala, the test and tribulation, never comes except with sins. وَلَا رُفِعَ إِلَّا بِالتَّوْبَةِ. And it is never taken away except with tawbah. So what do we need to do? We as Muslims need to turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We need to make tawbah. We need to stop the fahash, the lewd actions and the immoral actions that have become widespread in our countries, and know that these are sabab for the punishment that comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. With that, we need to be making our adhkar, we need to be making our dua, we need to be focusing on our salah. As we know from the hadith that Imam al-Tirmidhi had mentioned, and it's a Hasan Sahih hadith, that whoever makes the dua, Bismillah, and in the name of Allah, alladhi la yadur ma ismihi shay'un, the one that with whose names nothing can harm you, fil ardi wa fil sama, and in the earth, wala fil sama, and not in the skies, wa huwa sami'ul alim. Whoever makes this dua 3 times, in one of the riwayat in the morning and evening, then nothing will harm him. So we need to make these adhkar. These daily adhkar that we should be making anyway, we need to make these adhkar. We need to make our salah. We need to, if you're not somebody who's been missing salawat, step up, make your salawat. If you are in a self-imposed quarantine or isolation, whatever, don't waste your time. Instead, use that time with the Quran, use that time with hadith, use that time with books, use that time with dua. You have YouTube, so many lectures, so many series you can catch up on, and so much you can memorize. This is all you can use your time wisely with. And know that this is all from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet ﷺ in the hadith that is muttafaqun alayhi, reported by Bukhari and Muslim, he told us, La adwa. There is no such thing as just an infection going by itself. And that is scientifically true, because if you think about it, if you took just the basics of airborne diseases, that means anybody who sat next to somebody who had TB would surely get it if they were sitting close enough to inhale the disease. But many people come in contact with people with such infectious diseases but don't get them. And that tells you that what the Prophet is telling us, that it is only with the qadr, yani only what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wrote. So we always turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But we use the sabab, and we use the means. It doesn't mean that we don't use the means. Why? Because the hadith that is Hasan li ghayrihi, where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was talking to a sahabi about tying the camel. And the sahabi said, no, I'm going to have tawakkul ala Allah. So Rasulullah told him, no, tie her and then have tawakkul. Yani, this is something to tell you that we use the sabab. And we know from the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam about the one who is a leper, that and he run from the leper, كفرارك من الأسد, يعني like you run from the lion. And this hadith is also in the Muslim Imam Ahmad. It's authentic narration, as Shu'aib al-Arnaut and others have authenticated. So this tells you that you shouldn't be close to people with such kind of infectious diseases. Also the hadith about not putting the infected camel with the healthy camel and so on, which tells us that yes, we use the sabab, but we also remember that this is just asbab. In the end, everything is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us from those who go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with tawbah and with dua and with adhkar and with salah. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to take this bala away from this ummah and keep us all safe. Jazakumullahu khair.